just the frames. Got keys to kingdom, unlocking chains. Sober the podcast, open up your brains. Sober the podcast, let's get it, man.
Welcome back to another episode of Sober the Podcast with your host, Bradley Saxon. Got Clifton and CJ as usual.
What up?
But we got a great friend of ours in today, Mr. B. Reddy, Brian Reddy.
Hello.
What up, dog?
What's up?
Yeah.
Excited, man.
I
Glad
know
to be here,
Clifton
yeah.
and I and B go way back. Me and Brian go way back. But our paths have crossed over the years because of recovery. Mm-hmm. And we all are pretty much in the same, vein, doing the same things, just different cities. But that's the cool thing about recovery, man. The bond of suffering and just wanting to link arms to help many people.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we've learned real quick, man, and I don't think anybody on this seat has ever dealt with it, but we know, man, that there's no room for competition in what we do because
it's got to be partnerships.
Yeah, and here's the truth.
Well,
man.
there's a lot of places out there though that have that type of mindset. It's competition, and try to stop you from working together.
That's tough.
There's so many people to help, man. I just don't think there's any.
That's
need for that.
That's the key, man. Like there ain't enough rehabs as it is.
That's right. That's right.
Especially compared to the sufferers.
That's right.
But.
Well,
we're better
and
together.
it's better to help, find somebody the right fit too. Like say they're not a good fit for the bridge or your place or say Oaks, it's, having communication and partnerships help us to navigate people into better treatment.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're as good as we're tied to.
Yep.
That's right.
I think what makes the net strong is the knots, and that's the relationships. And there's several, partners on this couch that because between us, people have picked up their mats and walked, man. And I mean, that's the deal. I don't care if it's through the Oaks, through the bridge, through the Owl's Nest, through 143, man. The thing is they found recovery and freedom. And so that's the cool thing about it. So, B, thank you for coming all the way from Greenwood, spend some time with us.
I'm excited to be here, man. Yeah. I love you guys, man.
Yeah, we love you, dude.
It mean the world to me, so I'm excited to be here.
But we're about to start this icebreaker here, this three-pointer. We're gonna play a few songs, and you got to name the song, okay?
All right, here we go.
It's either name the artist or the song. It don't have to be both. But if you get both, so be it, right? But at the end of the show, depending on how many you get, will be depending on how many shots you get.
Did he get any practice shots?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
I bricked every one of them.
He bricked every one of them.
He was closer than some other guests though with their first initial shots.
Those are just the missed putts. Yeah. Save the ones you want to make.
I'm gonna build a house when I leave here.
Right. All right, I see one. I'm gonna start with. Okay. All right, y'all ready?
Yeah.
Y'all don't help him now.
All right,
let's go.
Hey, sitting sideways.
You think that's
boys
tough?
In the days.
Like I said, I know the songs, but the artist for me is a little harder until I get into it.
I feel like I might have started off.
All right, look, this is an honest program, but I got to be real. I don't know the artist, I don't know the song, but I'm going to say the name of the song is Sideways.
Let's go. Sitting sideways.
Sitting sideways.
Listen, they make it easy on me.
For some reason, I felt
Paul
like, reason, I thought that might be easy, but,
But you got to let it play for a minute, too, so that you can hear
the people's chant.
So you can hear who comes in rapping.
All right, I'll try this one then. Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Let's go.
That's the same state.
Just let it play.
It is the same state.
Just let it
You
play.
can tell by that.
Back in they didn't want me.
I'm really not trying to stump
wait.
you.
Is this Bubba Sparks?
No.
That's a good guess.
That's not a bad guess.
You remember Bubba Sparks?
Yeah.
I used to love that guy, man.
All right, let me try one more. You gonna get this.
All right.
Was that Mike Jones?
Yeah, Mike Jones.
All right, come on, man.
All right.
It's 50 Cent.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go.
Now we headed in the right direction.
Yes, sir.
Let's go.
All right. Let's see here. I'm fumbling through these, man. Like I'm trying to help him out here. All right.
Snoop Dogg.
Yeah. Now.
I was going to say
That's
Drake.
my 90s stuff,
It is
man. I love all that
Snoop
stuff.
Dogg Dre. All
That would
right.
have stumped me.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to try to get him on this one, okay? Last one.
This is Usher.
Yeah, it is.
Now we done
Confessions.
Confessions.
Yeah,
right?
we found his lane now.
Yeah.
All right, bro.
Yeah.
How about that? 3 for 3, baby.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So at the end, then we're equally going to see if you got a 3-pointer, right?
Not a jumper, a sitter.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a sitter. It is a sitter.
Okay.
It is a sitter. So tell the listeners how long you struggle with drug addiction. How old are you now?
I'm now 43 years old.
And how long you been sober?
I've been sober January 30th of 2018.
So that's how many years? I'm horrible at math.
A little more than 6.
That's fantastic.
A little more
So
than 6, yeah.
in the 6 years,
man, yeah.
which is incredible,
Yep.
over the course of your life, how many years do you think addiction stole?
Well, look, I mean, it even stole some of my years not on alcohol and drugs.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
if I can be honest with you, like, I mean, I relapsed 6 years ago for about 46 hours. But up until that point, I mean, so in the last 13 years of my life, I've used for 46 hours in between there.
Yeah.
But it was the greatest experience that ever happened to me.
Well, and it also shows how the days of sobriety isn't really, I'm not saying that they're not valuable, but they're not the greatest measure of a man.
Yeah. Well, I was still using a lot of different things to fill that hole inside of me.
Yeah.
Whether it be outflow, I was constantly having outflow, I was still trying to prove to 2 guys that weren't even in my life anymore and were gone that I could make it. The purpose wasn't to fill myself so that I could walk in freedom. The purpose was to prove to them that I could make it.
Yeah, which left you empty.
Which absolutely, and that comes from many different, aspects of my life through certain traumas that I've experienced.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of those. And I'd imagine that some of those were framed or started when you were younger.
Oh, yeah. You hear people's stories, they come from, look, my family did the best they could, growing up. And I didn't have I always, getting into a recovery, it was a really hard thing for me to understand that it wasn't them.
Like you thought they're the reason.
Well, I thought everything was the reason why I kept that, other than myself was the reason why I kept putting chemicals into my body.
Sure.
I've learned a long time ago, if it's them, there is no solution.
Yeah.
It's not them.
It ain't them.
It was my inability, I think, to look at the darkness inside of myself and allow that light to merge with that and allow that to become my power.
Yeah.
Because I was so scared of people. Yeah.
Did you have a good upbringing or did you have a rough upbringing? I know that it wasn't their fault, but just curious.
Yeah, no, it was rough. Yeah, my earliest age, to kind of paint a picture, I grew up. I found out at 27 years old that the man that raised me wasn't even my biological father.
You didn't know you were adopted.
I didn't know. Well, I wasn't adopted.
You had no clue.
I had no clue. When I was I wouldn't be here. I was born in Swickley, Pennsylvania, but the way I was conceived was on a one-night stand in a La Quinta Hotel in Quantico, Virginia. And my father was in the military, so he was working in the United Nations, so he's in Okinawa. And my mom had a one-night stand on my father. And when the person that she had the one-night stand on found out that my father was an officer, what he did was he, hightailed it out because apparently you sleep with an officer's wife. There's a lot of problems there in the military. So I grew up with this understanding. I've got an older sister who's got Down syndrome that's 2 years older than me, and then an older brother who was 4 years older than me. And I just always thought that I was a part of them. So at a young age, at 5 years old, I can remember my mom had a lot of issues because she fled Europe when she was 16 to get away from her family situation because some of the abuse she was experiencing. And so by the time she was 21, she had 3 kids, myself being the youngest, and 1 special needs child, and was kind of left to a lot of her untreated trauma and trying to figure this out as a mom. So I had to grow up with that. And I grew up, she was anorexic and bulimic, multiple personality disorder, tried to commit suicide, countless times. At 5 years old, my earliest memory was hiding razor blades, from my mom so she wouldn't cut herself. And as the youngest, I don't know, I almost took on the role of like the family healer.
Sure.
At a very young age. And at 8 years old, my mom left for treatment and was gone until I was 11. And I was left to be raised by a devoted Catholic in the house who would take my brother and sister to church. And I can remember sitting on the couch and watching them pull out of the driveway as a child, thinking that I was so broken that even God couldn't love me. So there was a lot of barriers for me when I tried to step into recovery through building this relationship with God, because if God were real, or if the man that raised me was a reflection of God, I didn't want to have anything to do with it.
So this was their daddy that would take them to church and leave you. But at the time, you thought it was your daddy too.
I thought it was my dad. I didn't find out until I was 27.
Right. So you didn't really understand what it was for him to take them and leave you.
Yeah, I didn't understand. And, Mom wasn't gone. So there was a lot of things I had to work through, like abandonment and certain things in my life that, I didn't understand at the time.
Well, that shapes you.
Oh, big
You
time.
don't know that as a kid, but you're being shaped.
And it puts lenses on you that filter everything you see.
Yeah, about people, about God, and about yourself.
Yeah.
For sure.
Which are the three aspects that we find healing through the 12 steps with.
Oh, 100%.
So
Well, I think the, to add on that, I think the 12 steps were an incredible platform to show me, yes, I found a lot of healing through the 12 steps, but it wasn't until I humbled myself and understood that the 12 steps were the platform that showed me other modalities of healing. I've been through EMDR sessions.
Explain that for me.
Well, what I mean is it's the platform of the 12 steps showed me what I needed to do with myself, through sponsorship and through fellowship, with the solution. You got the fellowship, you got the program of action. And my fellowship showed me a lot of the things. Well, actually, my behavior showed me a lot of the things that I needed to do once I got to a balance of steps 10, 11, and 12 was authentically committed to the process. Yeah. Right. Like, because I say authentically, because there was a period of time in my life where, it was, this, BS kind of 1 through 9 process. Sure. The way I used to work the steps was I knew step 1 was true, but I didn't want to hear anything about 2 and 3. So I wrote this, half 4 step. I remember being at the Owl's Nest and remember Devin, I'll give him a shout out. Devin Upchurch was my sponsor. I loved him, man. And I can remember, I didn't want to share a lot of the things. There was a lot of things that I go around and I speak about today that I just didn't put on my 4 step, know, and I can remember Devin coming up after my first 5th step up the stairs to the old dungeon at the Owl's Nest where we used to have that those clothes that they would donate. And I took a nap, because I left probably, 10, 15 things off my 4 step. And when he came in the room, I stood up and I was like, amazing. I'm spiritually awoken. So I did no 6, 7. I only made amends to the people that would benefit me. And then I worked no 10, no 11, and I sponsored 15 people. And
which is not uncommon.
No. So I was so scared of what other people were going to think about me. To be honest with you, I'd call a treatment center. I'm like, please, man, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And then I'd get there and I'd become the biggest fake, person in the treatment program because to the point to where I was more concerned with getting you guys to like me than I was getting my own 5-year-old daughter back in my life.
Question. How many treatment centers did you go to before the Owl's Nest, and when did you go to the Owl's Nest?
Yeah, I arrived at the Owl's Nest April 8th, 2009.
Okay.
But prior to that, I started my first treatment center at 11 years old.
Wow.
And
what was you using at 11?
It wasn't drugs and alcohol. When Mom came out of treatment at 11 years old, I was the type of kid. Remember, my sister has Down syndrome, right? So, and the man that raised me was this retired major in the Marine Corps, 2 tours in Vietnam. Had a mortar round blow up 5 feet away from him when he was on his 2nd tour, and immediately went to a Vietnamese hospital for a month, got out, went to Philadelphia for 3 months to heal, and then wanted to go back to Vietnam. I'm just trying to paint this picture of who my father was, right? So my sister, kids can be really mean, and we always went to public school together. We rode the bus together, and if I didn't stick up for my sister, I had to face the wrath of my father when I got home. And I'd rather act out and, fight kids and be extremely, I was just so angry, but for many different reasons, but I'd rather portray this picture of violence and anger so that they didn't harm my sister. So, there was a lot of that. So I was, 6th grade, I would raise my hand and ask the teacher if I could use the bathroom, and I'd walk home. I can remember vividly walking into school and just thinking to myself, this isn't for me. I pretty much got a 6th grade education, man. I failed 6th grade, passed 7th grade with straight Fs, was expelled from 8th grade for, I said I'd get vulnerable. For lighting our tennis courts on fire at school. And even looking back at that, the man that raised me was he was a tennis player for the military, for the Marine Corps. And they wouldn't let me play sports because I was, I had behavioral issues. And I can remember they were cutting the grass one day, and I went to the bathroom and I saw this gas can sitting there, and I went and poured it all over the net in 8th grade and lit it on fire, came back in, and there was a janitor down the hallway, and I said, hey man, somebody set the tennis courts on fire. You need to come over. So they found out it was me, and they expelled me that year. So I took a whole nother year off. State found out about it. Family got in trouble, and they sent me to Paris Island for my 9th grade year.
Marine boot camp?
Well, it was this program that the county of Greenwood started, which was called Project SOAR, for kids that just public school couldn't handle them. Mm-hmm. So I excelled there. I found a teacher that saw me, man, and like listened to me, and he knew the pain, and he loved me. Mm. And I still actually talk to that teacher to this day. But and then I went back to 10th grade to public school, and then I was expelled for selling drugs, and then went and got my GED, and that's it, But yeah, so first treatment center at 11 years old for behavioral issues, because they didn't know. I didn't put drugs and alcohol really into my body until I was 15. But the first center that I went to, I had some really bad things happen to me in that program. Mm-hmm. And on day 26, I was in there stealing a pack of cigarettes from some kids, and they were 17. There was an adolescent ward. This was in Charleston, and there was a adult ward. And 2 boys came in there and held me down and did things to me in that room that nobody should ever have to go through. And so that was my first experience for treatment. So, I mean, on top of all the trust issues and abandonment stuff that I was dealing with at a young age anyway. So when I would try to get into treatment, and I'll get into that here in a second with my first drug and alcohol treatment, but it was really hard for me to trust people and actually think that people wanted something for me, rather than most of the time looking at things with a lot of programs where they just want things from you. Yeah. Whether it's a dollar sign on your forehead or they don't see the soul. And it's, so that was just a lot of that experience. So 11, 2 more at 13, locked facilities. And then I went to a program in Florida. I was facing, at 15 years old, I was already on probation, but I was facing R&E until I was 21. And I had multiple felony charges, and they sent me to this program in Florida for 4.5 months, and it changed my life. And I remember going down there, and the reason why they sent me there, my attorney sent me there, so that hopefully I would get the suspended sentence to R&E and juvenile detention. And I went there and found out that the reason why I was creating these problems in my life was because of extreme neglect. And when I would create an issue, the attention was on me and people would pay attention to me. Mm-hmm. So I found a lot of comfort in that. Even though it was the wrong type of attention, I would do that. And then once I found alcohol and drugs, I didn't have to break the law anymore because I found the wholeness through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that people don't understand about trauma. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we think it's abuse, like the parent abused or the parent, whatever. A lot of times it's what they didn't do.
Yes.
For us, that's traumatic.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so went through a lot of that cycle, and first drug and alcohol at 18. And that was 1998. And I went in there with a cocaine addiction and left with a opioid addiction.
What treatment was that?
It was down in Brunswick, Georgia. I don't think they're there anymore, but it was called Focus by the Sea. And so I showed up there, and it was a 30-day treatment program. And I remember getting in there, and on day 2, I could see the residents coming into the group room, and they were nodding out. And I was like, what are you guys doing? And they said, bro, go to the nurse's station. Tell them you got a problem with opioids, and they'll give you this substance called Subutex. And I was like, really? I was like, bro, we're in treatment. Like, do it, man. I'm telling you, it's wonderful. And so I went up to the nurse's station. I remember looking at this. I can see her face right now. And I went up there and I looked at her and I said, opioids, bad. Now, I'd never put an opioid in my body up until this point. And I looked at the lady and I was like, yeah, I got a problem with opioids. And she gave me this little pill in a cup and told me it would dissolve under my tongue. And I put it under my tongue, and 20 minutes later, I was throwing up in the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And I used that substance every day while I was there and got high. I mean, the whole time I was there. And I remember on day, I think it was 27 or something like that, the director comes in and says, you graduated the program. And I was supposed to be there 30 days, so I just think I'm really good at treatment, like I'm some type of special student, in this thing. I'm just excelling in treatment. And so I don't know if you've ever been to one of those programs where you sit around like this half moon and everybody squeezes this coin and says something nice about you, like, we'll never lose touch, we love you, and they all sign the big book that you haven't even read while you're in there. And I left, and when I got home, I got I remember getting the bill, And it wasn't that I had graduated the program. It was that my insurance money ran out. They couldn't charge me anymore.
Yeah.
And they were charging me $800 a day for a urine test in a locked facility, and they were billing the insurance for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And left the same, worse.
Oh, that's when I started. That's when OxyContin blew up, and that's when I started with OxyContin, and then just kept doing the other things I was doing. Yeah. Yeah.
Left with went in with
Crazy.
left with an opioid problem, which really
my story's not unique. You know, that's a story of many people that we work with here and the places that we work.
There's no doubt.
I mean, there's a place that refers to us. You know, we have a 30-day minimum requirement. You know, you have to be sober for 30 days to get into our sober living. And this facility charges $1,000 a day to insurance, and they call us at day 14, day 21, day whatever. It's like, and they're just straight up with us, and they'll tell you, look, this guy's insurance is done. We got to find somewhere for him to go.
Yeah.
And he hasn't gotten anything while there.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a big racket.
no treatment.
No, it really is.
No
yeah.
treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't bill for 12 steps. You know,
Right.
but everybody that works there got sober through 12 steps. It seems like
It does seem like.
I mean, it's just
And you know, we've had a few come to us through there that did get it once they came. You know, so I mean, you don't want to kill the deal with them, but it's sad when your rules won't let you take them, and you know they think they've got like you said, you think you've done something there because they're telling you that, but there's been no treatment. So
yeah, and I'm definitely not saying anything bad about. I mean, a lot of their hearts are incredible, you know, and it's the souls that we get to serve that come through the process there. You know, like I needed that experience. I mean, the program I work with today wouldn't even exist if it probably wasn't for that experience, and many of the other experiences that I've had.
Yeah.
You know.
So how old were you at this time
Which one?
when you found OxyContin?
Oh, I was 18 years old. Yeah,
And so
18 years old.
Your next treatment after this was Owl's Nest?
No, next treatment after that was I went through multiple programs before I hit the Owl's Nest.
was it like every year or two you'd be in
Well,
treatment?
as my disease progressed, the treatment facility stays the time in between them became shorter and shorter and shorter.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys can relate to that, right? Like, I mean, you know, at first I was able to make it 2 years, and then it was a year and a half. Today, if I were to go, Lord willing, I never go into chemical relapse again, but it'd probably be like 3.5 seconds.
take
You know,
long.
like, it's just, but yeah. So then it was another one. You know, at 20, I mean, I've been up to Jersey. I mean, I've been all over the Eastern Seaboard, man. Out to Minnesota. You know, all
Hazleton.
over Hazleton. Well, it was the Hazleton. Yeah, back in the day. Yeah.
It just hit me what he said earlier. That really just, when he said the steps, there is healing through the steps, but the steps show you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's profound. Because what he's saying is if you don't take the action, then you don't change.
Mm-hmm.
And so the steps reveal to you the things that are broken, but there's action required there to begin to process that healing, man. That
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Like when he said that his first take through the steps, he really didn't do 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Really didn't have a good understanding of 10 then if he didn't do 6 and 7. Therefore, he wasn't changing.
Yep.
And it just hit me for some reason.
Well, and I think we say this a lot too. You know, he must not be willing. I hate that statement. You know, I do, because I wasn't, you know, like at that time I was willing. You know, I mean, man, I got a daughter, you know, like I love her more than, she's the most incredible thing to me in this entire world. You know, like I live for her. I just didn't know where the willingness needed to be applied.
Yeah. And I think,
You know?
and I think it would be safe to say, while we don't talk bad about these other places, and they do have great intentions, that there is a way to be highly intentional but be misdirected.
Well, I do talk
for
bad
sure.
about them. I mean, just to be honest, I do, because
But what we're trying to say in a way that's,
it hurts my heart to see.
yeah.
Mine too.
You know what I mean?
mine
But
too.
what we're saying is that, you know, there is a level of knowledge and understanding that we feel is necessary to help people like us.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Now,
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
and
No, for sure.
Yeah, and you know, I know I don't know everything, and I find myself sometimes saying they're not willing. But I want to learn from you, because your experience is something that could help me to help someone who's in the same
for sure.
situation.
For sure.
So, like, where was the willingness not being applied where you think it needed to be applied? Because when I hear the story, what I would think is,
Sure.
the first thing you said was you knew 1, but 2 and 3 you kind of hopped over.
Yeah.
So would that be where the willingness needed to be applied, or can you help me understand that better?
Yeah. Well, for me, it was my willingness needed to. It was really hard for me to level my pride and my ego of what you were going to think about me. So that was a barrier that I needed to get over.
Yeah.
Was this. I was great at studying you and like what you wanted me to be, and I'd be whatever you wanted me to be. And, I believe this is just such a true statement for all of us. Each of us have this front stage and we have this backstage, right? What I've learned through recovery was that like trying to get my backstage to mirror my front stage as much as possible of what I was showing everybody. I mean, brother, I would go to the Owl's Nest, and I can remember Gene Rao coming from the admin office, going down to the meeting hall for the 12 o'clock meeting. And I can remember positioning myself in a chair, right? Like flipping through the big book as he's walking by, and he thinks I'm reading it. And then when he would go into the meeting hall, I'd close the book and I wasn't reading anything. Mm-hmm. I desperately wanted people to believe in me, because the truth is I didn't believe in me. Mm-hmm. Right. And, but yeah, so, I mean, even when people would talk about, that's why I believe like the 12 steps. I mean, I always share this statement, and anybody with time will agree with this. Addiction hasn't done anything to me. CJ and I were just talking about this. It's done everything for me. I can share this. I mean, even without the 12 steps, I would have never known God. Growing up in the way and the resentments and everything that I had, the 12 steps delivered me to a relationship with God. Right? The 12 steps delivered me through a relationship with myself, which allowed me to build a relationship with God through the obstacles that, I always share, like, obstacles are the way. Like, nothing in this world is happening to me. Everything that's happened or happening is happening for me, right? No matter what, right? Like, being raped at 11 years old wasn't something, like that happened to me. I can remember a lot of the times thinking back on my experience that the stories in my past didn't make a lot of sense, but God showed them a greater purpose if I was patient. Right. And I can remember because I was married to my wife for almost 7 years, and my 4 steps always looked like I was molested, but I was able to fight them off of me. And at 11 years old, when that happened to me, I didn't even want to tell my mom truly what happened, because I was so scared that it was going to make her feel bad that she would have to leave again and get more treatment. So
that's a heavy load there.
Well, even as a kid, but I walked around, and I'll be honest with you. I mean, this was what set me on a path. I mean, you guys know Steve, and in my opinion, and I feel confident to talk about this, I think that he was the best at being the best in a lot of ways, and he was the best at being the worst.
Yeah, 100%.
And I learned a lot from him of what not to do, but I also learned a lot from him of what to do. Yeah. And regardless of the demons that he was facing and the things that he was fighting in himself, like, the lives that he was able to change with such few words, but also the lives that he was able to harm with such few words. And, it taught me. I remember in April 8th, 2009, when I pulled up there, I remember I was there on day 3. And at this point, my insurance company had probably spent almost $200,000 on trying to get me well. And what he did for me in an office in 5 minutes was, greater than any program that I'd ever been through, because I went in and I started talking about how, at the time I was molested, but I was able to fight them off of me. And that's where I was at that point in my life. That I grew up, my mom had the issues and all of this stuff. And he looked at me on a couch, and I remember sitting in that office, and I'd known him 5 minutes, and he said, "You'll never get sober." And I looked at him, and it was the first time somebody ever talked to me that way. And I stood up in that office, and he stood up, and he looked at me, and he said, "Sit down." Mm-hmm. And I remember looking at him like, well, I guess I'm not in these Florida treatment centers anymore.
Yeah.
This is something different. And as I was sitting down, he said this, and I knew he meant it. He said, "I love you, man." And, I'll never forget that day. And he said, "Let me tell you why." And he says, "It's not until you stop playing the victim and you start playing the victor that your life's going to change." He says, "Instead of talking about these problems, Brian," he says, "why don't you let me help you start talking to them?" Mm-hmm. And he flipped me that day. Now, I went through the program 4 times, but it was that seed, right? That was like planted, where I realized that I was the victim and everything, like, if victims never get sober, man, like, it's like, if I'm the victim and it's somebody else's fault, unfortunately, there's no solution.
Yeah,
I know.
And I had to start looking at myself on the way that I was viewing these situations. And instead of allowing them to destroy me, I started allowing them to strengthen me. Mm-hmm. And, it was a lot of work that went into that. But like I said, like the 12 steps was a platform that showed me the different types of therapies that I need. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think we talk about this enough. I mean, I meet with a guy once a month, just for my own growth outside of 12-step recovery work, just to better me mentally. I think we spend so much time investing in the physical aspects of ourselves, on how we look, or different diet plans and all these things. And sometimes we forget to invest into our mental well-being.
So good.
Well, and I think a lot of what he was saying too, to answer your question, I think that it takes a man armed with the facts about themselves and this solution to help educate me on where to apply my willingness.
Yeah.
And I think Steve played a vital role in his life and my life.
And mine, bro. I had a similar experience with him like that.
Like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes, but like, you put me in front of somebody that tells me if I just go to meetings and not drink, I'm going to stay sober. Well, that's where I'm applying the willingness to. But guess what? I'm still spiritually sick because I ain't treated the spiritual malady. So I think that you can't say enough about, knowing that you can't just up and do a treatment center tomorrow because you want to help people. It ain't that easy.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, there is a level of equipping and experience that comes with, like, dude,
it takes a lot more than a good heart.
Well, I'm just going to tell you this.
For sure.
Had I tried to do this a long time ago, it wouldn't have worked. I didn't have the character, number one, to sustain it anyway, but I just realized, man, like, it's definitely a calling. Like, you won't do it long if you do it for man.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Because the first 6 that steal from you and and leave, like, you're going to be done with it. So, like, I think there's just something to be said about how God wove our paths in the direction we went that's really equipped us and set us in a place of turning something on that some days I wish would be turned off.
No.
There's some days I'm thinking I'd rather just work a regular job.
Yeah. I have those
Go back
too.
and just sell some flowers. But y'all know as well as I do, once God turns that switch on, man, there's really no turning it off.
No, for sure. I mean, it's so much more than, I thank you because, I mean, and you, Cliff, I mean, you guys, you were around treatment. You know what it is because people think, oh, we're just going to go start a treatment program without maybe experience of being in a treatment setting or working with people, because it was so much more for me than moving to Greenwood, South Carolina. Like, God wasn't just calling me to start a treatment program. He was calling me to love people at their very worst and to stand in the fire, of criticism and blame. Unfortunately, a lot of the times it's our fault if they make it. And unfortunately, it's sometimes, people seem to think it's our fault if they don't. And
no
I don't
doubt.
want either one of it, it's what makes, I think, successful is us being able to instill the belief that recovery is possible. Until I believed for myself that, like, recovery was a thing and it could actually work, like, it never landed with me.
Yeah.
And people like you, Bradley, of sitting in those workshops at the Owl's Nest, like, instilling that belief. I wouldn't be sitting on this couch without you, and like hearing that and actually making recovery something that's exciting. And you know what I found too is all the pain that we've been through in our past. I know every story about your situation with your father, or like all of these things are showing up the Owl's Nest with your purple do-rag on, and like, and what Paul said to you that day. And, I think about those stories because, what I found through recovery and at least being willing to give it back to somebody is it alleviated a lot of the guilt and the shame that I felt over my past, when I now could use that to be able to help somebody else out. And, the 12 steps brought a lot of freedom, but helping others, brought me a level of peace, and understanding that, the past was for a purpose and, it doesn't have to be in vain.
Absolutely.
So,
man, my memory sucks. Well, I was there when you came to the Owl's Nest.
You were, yeah.
I vaguely remember it. I don't know why my memory's so bad, but you got in trouble with James Sweeney?
I got in trouble with James Sweeney. I did. Yes, that was
Now, were you the men's director?
He was the men's director at the time.
I got you.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember 2 weeks. When I got to the Owl's Nest, I mean, to believe it or not, like, still to this day, I'm more of an introvert, like, I don't, when I do workshops or I go and I speak, it's safe for me because, in a sense, I don't know if this sounds crazy, but like, I can control the situation. Small talk weirds me out. You put me with a bunch of like normal people and at a dinner with me and my wife. And,
I'm the same way.
And I always go too far. Right? Like I get too vulnerable or too like my wife's elbowing me or my kids. Like, you know, they'll have
like
team meetings before we go out with normal people. They're like, Dad, just don't share any stories, you know?
It just makes me uncomfortable inside to do all the small talking stuff. So I get it.
Yeah.
Does me too.
So I mean, but I also know the purpose of being able to help people, you know, and so that's what gets me up. But no, because when I got to the Owl's Nest, I didn't know where to put my hands, man. Like sitting down, I thought everybody in front of me was thinking about me.
And you
Everybody
weren't allowed to fold your
looking at me.
arms.
No,
there.
they sit us on a front row, you know. And my God, I was uncomfortable. And I remember you yelling out of the window. I was there maybe 2 weeks, and you're in Gene's office, and you yell out, "It's gonna be okay." And I'm thinking I'm like, I hate this guy. So I was like, it is not gonna be okay. It might work for you, but I'm too broken, you know. And then there was a house meeting. Remember how house meetings used to be the best night of the week? Like Thursday nights were like just lit, right? Like, I mean, it was the senior residents would call out the other senior residents.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember this. And, you know, like I can remember I didn't talk to anybody and you put me in this hot seat. And I remember sitting there and looking at everybody. I might get emotional. I cry at everything, man. I got sober and I'm telling you, like Folgers commercials. And, but you go and you yank this, we're in Silkworth, right? In the meeting hall, there's women in there, there's men in there. And you go pull this mirror off the side of this thing, right? You like hold it in my face. I don't know where you got it from, but you're like, look at yourself. And then you had the senior residents stand up and hug me and tell me they love me. And I wanted to crawl under a table and run. And because I didn't feel lovable at all. I mean, I hated myself. I ran away from recovery for so long because I didn't even feel like I deserved it. And you saw that. And I don't know why to this day you did that. But after that, I mean, I remember I didn't want to be in the hot seat anymore. So like as badly as I didn't want to put a smile on my face when you walked around the corner, I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" You know, like, you know, everything's wonderful, you know. And I didn't feel like that, but it was the first time where I actually started seeing how like my energy was changing, and then started getting through the steps. Even though I, you know, BS my way through them, I still ended up getting this feeling of working with others, which changed everything, you know.
I think James is doing pretty good.
James doing great.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a little boat deal
Yeah,
down
I
there
seen
in
that,
Florida.
bro. Is it Florida?
Florida, yeah.
But he came from New York, didn't he?
Yeah, New York. Yeah. Remember that story? You let me stay.
And kicked him out?
Well, he kept using.
Yeah.
Like I think he was using and I begged, like when you drug tested us, I was negative and he had some stuff still going on. Yeah.
I do remember that now.
Yeah.
But I mean, man, like all those things mattered. Like you said, that they had purpose.
No,
and
sure.
and it's also experience that equips us when we get on this side to be able to help others better.
Big time.
You know, they're like, how do you know that? Because you're just like me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I do the same things you do, you know? So,
well, I think that's the thing too, because sometimes it's not just one size fits all for everybody. You've got your policies and your procedures that you try to adhere to every day to make sure it's equal across the board. But there are different situations and different people. And, you know, because you don't want to pick and choose favorites because that's when things start to crumble. But there are things that you have to look at it from a different angle sometimes and allow God to speak through you on what you need to do to serve that soul. Yeah. You know, it's not right for everybody. And some people don't agree with it. And that's the fire I'm talking about that you got to stand in sometimes
bro.
to, you know, understand this is what we're going to do. And then I think it's the communication with the residency. We're super transparent where we're at. This is why we make this decision. This is where that came from.
Yeah.
And if you don't like it and you want to go talk about it and make it about you and how we're all messed up so that you have a better excuse on why we're the problem, so you have an excuse to keep using, that's on you.
Yeah, for sure.
Not us.
Yeah. And the more you do it, the more you realize what the deal is. In the beginning, it throws you off, but the longer you do it, the better you get at understanding it's not personal.
No.
It's not. You know, it's not personal. No. So how many, at that juncture, didn't you stay sober for a while?
Yes. Yep. I made it 8 months sober. It was the longest I had sober at that time. And
this was in 09. That
in
visit?
09. Yeah. And then I had I had a sponsee that 6 months sober. You know, it's funny how the disease, I remember hearing this one time, we'll use our spiritual success kind of as building blocks to reestablish itself, right?
Yeah.
And I had this sponsee that went down to Beaufort 6 months sober, and it was the first time in my life that I was ever put around a substance and didn't want it. Because on Sunday he was supposed to pick me up at 12 o'clock. Well, 12 o'clock turned into 6 o'clock, and finally he pulls up into the driveway. And when this guy smokes crack, you can see it from a football field away. You know,
100%.
Like he's twitchy, and I could see it. And I walked out, got the keys, and as we were leaving Beaufort, I looked at him. I said, "What's wrong, buddy?" He says, "I said, "I know." I said, "I love you. Let's go get you help." And we shot back up to the Owl's Nest on a Sunday. And as we're coming through Yamasee, South Carolina, I remember turning onto I-95. And when I looked over at him, he opened up his hand and said, "I got to use this on the way up to the Owl's Nest, and I need you to pull over at these rest areas." Now, when I looked at him, I said, "You do what you got to do, brother, but I'm not going to stop. We're going to go and get you help." And now, I don't recommend this for anybody listening on this podcast. You know, I should have pulled over and immediately called somebody, said, "This is a situation I got going on." But he used in that car with me the whole way up to the Owl's Nest, up to I-95, and I didn't want it. And I was amazed. This is 6 months sober into this thing. I'm sponsoring guys, you know, working with people now. I didn't do an honest 1 through 9, but I'm finding a lot of joy and freedom in helping people. And I remember going into Gene's office. He was there that night, and the 8 o'clock meeting was just letting out. And I ran in, and I said, "Gene," I said, "you won't believe it. The 10-step promise just came true in my life." And you know, Gene, he's like, "All right, good buddy, way to go. Hey, all right." But what the disease did to me when I turned the corner to walk out of that office that day was, I remember thinking to this, man, I wonder if I really am a drug addict or an alcoholic. It's like I was just in the car for 2.5 hours with a dude smoking crack.
It wasn't a miracle. Now it's maybe I'm not like them.
Maybe I'm not like them. You know, so it was another 2 months before I went into a chemical relapse. But I ended up, it was everybody else. It was the Owl's Nest. They didn't agree with the relationship I was in, and you know, which was rightfully so. You know, those people that I was seeking counsel from started judging me, you know, in my mind. Yeah. And although I loved them the whole 6 months that they were, helping me to grow, but now they were trying to hold me back from something that I selfishly wanted to pursue that wasn't godly. And so it was the program. I left there, and then I went to do this. This is a true story. I said, I'm going to go get $20 worth of drugs and prove to myself that I'm not an addict and just keep it in my pocket. That was my thinking, you know, and I did that. By 5 o'clock in the morning that night, I owed $500 to get my car back, wondering how did I get here again? You know, and within that 2 month relapse, I tried to go back to the program twice, but I couldn't humble myself. Tried to commit suicide down the street. By tying my hoodie to a closet pole, I heard somebody was successful doing that. And and then finally I tried to come back a 4th time, and they sent me up to Jersey and decided to pick up a heroin habit while I was up there, but that's a whole nother thing.
So you went to treatment in Jersey?
Yeah, I went up to treatment. Remember old T Smith?
Yeah. Oh yeah, T Smith.
So T was he was up there. He was his label was the chief recovery officer at this program up in
you don't know T.
Dover, New Jersey.
So.
Oh,
yeah, he died of cancer.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
he was a good one.
Yeah.
He battled. He had some struggle, but T was just his love for people, man, and like
it was
what I learned from him, and it was unbelievable. You know?
Yeah. So how'd you end back up in South Carolina?
Yeah, so
just when you finished the treatment, you moved back.
Yeah. You know, there's this part in the 12 and 12. I love this sentence. It says in every case, you know, pain had been the price of admission into a new life. You know, and I think that's true for all of us, right? Like,
I remember hearing you say that, and that stuck with me.
Yeah.
When I heard you say that one day at the Nest.
Oh, it's one of my favorite sentences, and it's just been tied that into all of our experience. You know, like I just think it's so beautiful. But yeah, decided heroin wasn't for me, and I got in a car accident up in Jersey, and I remember waiting to get back down. I was going to get a settlement check. I wasn't, you know, how we do back in the day, you know, like I got in a car accident. I'm not going to fix my car. I'm going to just take that check and go do other things with it. Bro. But it wasn't even so much the alcohol or drugs. I mean, I was convinced I was going to go down to Beaufort. I had a buddy of mine that owned a restaurant in Hilton Head, and he was going to give me the general managing position to run this restaurant called The One, and had everything set up. And I get down to Beaufort on a Wednesday, and I convinced my mom that I got a headache. You see, because I can manipulate my mom to get things from her because I knew she couldn't say no because of how bad she felt over the things she thought she had done to me as a child. And when I saw that on my inventory, right, and because I wasn't willing to make amends for a long time in that situation, because if I did, knew I was going to shut the door on manipulating her. And I used, you know, her defects against her to fuel my drug habit for years. And So convinced her, you know, she gave me some pills and I use those on a Wednesday. And on Friday, I go to the mailbox and I get this check, right, from that settlement. And it was the first time in 8 months I was going to see my daughter, Olivia. And she was 5 at the time. And I remember calling her and that night and saying, you know, hey, Daddy's going to pick you up and take you to the beach the next morning at 10 a.m. And I convinced myself that since I had to pick my daughter up at 10 a.m. the next morning and take her to the beach, that I could do $50 worth of crack cocaine and be there for her. And I acted on that line. I ran into the truth, and you know, I went on a 7-day run and refinanced this car I was in, and you know, never picked my kid up. But when I got off that run, her and I talk about it to this day. But I remember picking up my cell phone, and it was my daughter on the other end of the phone saying, leaving messages saying, "Daddy, I'm waiting at the end of the driveway. Are you coming? You know, Daddy, are you going to be here? Are you going to be there?" And I never picked her up. And I remember hanging up that phone, and you know, there's one man that let me back into the program at the Owl's Nest, and instead of running away from you guys, like, I decided to run to you, you know, and I desperately wanted to change my life, man. That was like August 5th, 2010. And just started throwing everything I could into it. And, you know, really started to make some changes, but I still had a lot of demons, man, you know, like still fighting through some insecurities or, this front stage I was presenting to people, but was just so scared to be seen and heard. And but started just making some changes, and then
that began the journey you're on now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Then was at the Owl's Nest for a while, and I mean, brother, I did all kinds. I mean, I don't know how much time we got, but my God, I went through all kinds of stuff, you know, there. And
but eventually you started working there, right?
Yeah, then started working there.
Yeah, you were working there when I got there.
Yeah, started doing admissions. I remember
when you got back August 5th, 2010.
Yep.
Who was running it?
We had Lori Ann there. Remember old Lori Ann? She was at the desk for a little while, and then we had Gene there. We had
who was the men's director?
Who was the men's director back then?
I don't remember when I left, but it was sometime late 2000.
I think it was like a hodgepodge of people, man. I think it was
like
more
Daniel
so back
McAllister?
at that time. Yeah, but I think it was an accumulation of like alumni that were coming.
Was
know,
Heath there yet?
We had like Rodney, you know, like Daniel, a lot of those guys, you know. Remember Rodney? Big Rodney?
Yeah.
Big Rodney?
Yeah, Rodney Lighty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember Rodney. Yeah, I don't know why Rodney destroyed. Yeah, I remember Rodney. Heath was there, right?
Oh, Heath was there. Yeah, Heath was there. Yeah, no, I was there when Heath passed away. You know, we were on our way. It was Easter morning, and we were gonna go eat Easter breakfast, and we got the call on that. Broke my heart too, buddy.
God Almighty.
I loved him, man. You know, he was there when my daughter Kayla was born. Sat there and held her, you know, at the hospital. I mean, came to see us, and he was a light, man.
Yeah, he was.
No, Heath was the men's director there at the time. That's right.
He must have.
He was the men's director.
Yeah, I remember hearing Heath. Yeah. You know, he said, you know, there are certain little memories that just break through. Like I said, where I heard you, you know, when I heard you say that, and so many from Steve. But I remember he said, "If I can do this, you can do this. If I can do this, you can do this." And he said it one day, and it got in.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, if this dude can do this, I can do it. You know?
No, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the men's director when I was there.
Yeah, recovery puts you in so many cool situations. Like, we do deal with some horrific things. But, like, when I sit here, we're all three talking about a guy that I remember walking in day one, sitting in a corner, couldn't hold his head open, couldn't hold his head up. And then over the years, watching God just do some crazy things in his life, and then watch him live his life to help other people.
Yeah.
Are things I still go back to realize if God can do it then, he can do it now.
And, for sure.
I mean, dude, we need those kind of moments, those frames of reference, because sometimes we get bogged down. We do get selfish and think about ourselves. And a lot of times I got to have a frame of reference to realize, man, this ain't never been about you anyway.
No.
So good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. You know, I mean, like you say, I mean, there's different levels to, I think, you know, sobriety. You know, I also think there's different levels to people's pain. You know, and I think that sometimes in recovery, comparison is the number one killer, man.
Yeah, it does kill.
You know, when we compare ourselves to other people and their sobriety, because I did that, man. I compared it to Bradley or, you know, these other people and the way that they talked. And I remember trying to be something, you know, or share in a way that was somebody else's message that was never mine, and that could never be me. And when you find you, man, and you tie your experience into the words on those pages, man, it makes it come alive, and it becomes that. So, you know, or why is this guy able to stay sober and it seems so easy for him, although I don't understand the place that he was that put him into that position to be able to follow recovery in the way he does, you know, and I'm thinking I'm too broken and this works for them, but I'm just such a screw up, you know, and that was just the way that I thought about myself all the time, without understanding that, you know, I wasn't, you know, there was a purpose for this, you know, and really that didn't unlock until I started having an understanding of a higher power, right? And a relationship. I mean, I'm talking about building this. I've got at 2:00 today, my phone will buzz in my back pocket. It's just a reminder for me to talk to God. I get so busy, man. Like, you know, there's this sentence I love. It says, rush and you'll miss the magic of being born. And I think hurry is probably the number one spiritual destroyer. I was always chasing me and trying to be somewhere that I was just not at the time. And, you know, to be present in this room with the same wholeness that alcohol and drugs provides us without it now is just such a gift, man.
It's a miracle. Yeah.
Isn't it a miracle?
It is.
It's magic, right? Like it's, and it only gets better. Not saying that we don't have things, but like those obstacles are the way that shows us to know ourselves. And that's just what I'm obsessed with today is like, why do I react to this situation? Or, you know, my wife was probably the best mirror for me. But
my
you know
wife
I mean?
too.
Yeah, mine too.
Well, I say all the time, man, like I've had some really good sponsors in my life. Like,
Me too.
and I've been crowded with some of the best people in recovery. But dude, I'm going to tell you, my growth really escalated when I got married.
Me too.
I'm just telling you, like, there was nobody that could hold me to the fire like she did. And actually me feel like I got to change. And
I had a mentor tell me there is, you know, God's number one way for sanctification is marriage.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could go on about it, but I think that the best thing that ever happened to all four of us probably is the women that are in our life that, you know, like, I don't know, man, like, it just become the thing that really taught me how selfish I really was, bro. I thought I was doing pretty good, you know? Then I realized, bro.
Well, I think our wives too get the authentic, like the real backstage and front stage, right?
Well, but think about this. Like, they get the real, right? They get the real thing. Well, here's something I had to deal with in early marriage is my wife knows me and loves me for who I am. There's people out there that don't know me that love me for what my gift can do, right? And so now these people worship the ground I walk on, and now she knows who I really am.
Well, they're not impressed by our gift.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, there was a resentment my wife in the beginning had to work through of, I know who you really are, right? I know what needs to change, but then here are these people that don't think you, that think you walk on water, but it's the fact that they love what your gift can do for them. They don't know you.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
But like that kind of stuff is what helped me understand that my gift was for everybody, but my life was for a few. And it really started teaching me how, you know, to focus my energy on things that were important.
No,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, that's good.
But you met your wife in this journey, in this last 14 years.
Yeah, we started coaching soccer together about a year and some change, you know, like.
How'd that happen? Like,
Sandy
did you know her?
No, not really.
And so Sandy's like,
well, she comes in and she says, you know, I need somebody to coach soccer with my daughter, Brian. I heard that you used to play soccer. Fellas, I played soccer for 1 year at 8
I bet
years
you
old.
said yes, though.
And like we were talking about volleyball before this thing, I wasn't very good.
Had you met Kim before this?
Not really. I mean, she kind of, you know,
but
was
you like when she said my daughter, you had a visual.
I had a visual. Yeah, I knew Kim. And
so I'm all in on this.
So I'm like, so I raised my hand. Well, really at the time, I mean, it was like, I just wanted some extra bonus points, you know, with like the people I was working for. So, so we coached soccer for about 2.5 months together. I didn't make any moves or nothing. You know, I mean, my wife was picking me up from the staff house, you know. I had to turn that car in because I couldn't afford the
insurance.
Well, it wasn't the insurance; it was Title Max. That
the
bad
refi.
boy. The refi.
Oh
Title
yeah, the
Max,
refi.
I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
I mean, I cleaned up the car, told the tow truck to come get it. So she's picking me up, and then after that, after soccer season was over, she said, "Well, what do we do now?" And I can remember calling Steve on Waverly. I'm up in the top room there, and I said, "Well, let me do this right." So I called Steve and I said, "Hey man, can I take Kim out on a date?" And he hung up the phone. And I must have been up there 10 minutes, and I'm like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, might as well start getting my stuff together and roll out. And he called me back and he said, "Out of anybody in this world that I'd want to date my kid, man, it'd be you." And I said, "All right." So we started dating, and Yeah, been together ever since.
Why did he hang up on you?
I was going to say, what happened in that?
Well, he just, I don't know. I mean, I never asked him about that. But what was cool was Kim's grandma was there. So before she passed, like we built a really good relationship. And every time the first thing she says to me when I see her, she's like, "You remember that time you called Steve and asked to date Kimberly?" And so it was pretty cool. But yeah, so we started dating, and we both had a lot of things we had to work through, man. I mean, there was still a lot of untreated stuff that was going on in me. And, looking back at that time, there was a lot of conditional love that I was putting on Kimberly because I just didn't love myself. Like for me, I believe it's a spiritual impossibility for me to love her the way that I'm called to love her until I can finally begin to start loving myself.
Yeah.
And,
which the thing that we do usually, most of us, is we really don't know those things really until we get in a relationship.
For sure.
Truthfully.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
And
another place to apply willingness that you don't know where to apply it to.
Yeah, 100%.
I'll be honest with you. I mean, it was, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, I got all this outflow. After I had that relapse, I really started throwing things in, started doing radical mentoring through New Spring and, really having a lot of these godly men pour into me. But still I was trying to compensate for that and prove that, cause, to be honest with you, being the, father, with my father-in-law situation and maybe some of the ways that he did things, I really had to work hard to get out of that shadow and understand that it wasn't my same motive, in some of the things that I was doing, which I knew that about myself, but still, I mean, working with sick people, it's always about something, regardless of how clean you are, or how hard you try to work and your love for people, there were still comparisons. And so I tried to get out of that. And, so I had all this outflow in 5 years, a little more than 5 years ago. Kim's at the divorce attorney, and I remember it put me into a place where I started realizing and putting things in perspective of what I needed. So we tried marriage counseling. I don't know if anybody's ever done that, but it made it worse, because I was going in there with the mindset, you need to fix this woman. And she was saying, you need to fix this guy. And it wasn't until I broke away from that and really started to turn the attention on what I needed to do through myself, through EMDR therapy and through active sponsorship and working together and diving back through this work, that our marriage took off, And when I started putting myself first, because I believe that's true for any of us, like I have to be like, I know that we have this chain of command and through my relationship with God, but like I have to become the most important person in my life in recovery. Guilt and shame had me putting everybody else ahead of me. But once I turned the focus and put it on me and I started loving me and becoming the most important person, then my kids got a dad in the way they deserve to have that. Then my wife got a husband in the way that she deserved to have a husband. Our recovery guys got a leader that, loved himself. I'll share this. Like, I mean, Oaks isn't who I am, man.
Yeah.
It was really hard for me to learn that in early recovery. Mm-hmm. It's what I do.
Yeah.
That's not who I am.
Mm-hmm. That's the truth.
And it's like, I love it. Don't get me wrong. It's everything I've ever wanted to be. But it's definitely not my identity.
Yeah.
You mentioned EMDR therapy a couple times. What's that?
It's a series of electrodes. What it does is it helps to bring you back to those times in your life where you've experienced the trauma, right? And it unlocks those things for you to kind of, in a sense, stop acting in this childlike way where you're utilizing those character defects, and it rewires them to put you in your adult seat over them. So it helps you to start, growing through that. And it's deep, man. I mean, it's I don't suggest it for anybody in early recovery. But as you have some time, like trying to unpack and heal some of those traumas, it's one of the best forms of trauma healing that's known, and it's holistic. So it's not, anything that's going to come that can jeopardize your sobriety through it. But it also can bring up suppressed memories.
Yeah. So so we took a trip with Bill Nickus, and he had something that happened to him early on that at 39, he dealt with it after 20 something years, but he went through this therapy and it just helped him get to this point. I'm not just making this up.
Yeah.
Like, because he was wrestling with, did I make this up? Did this really happen? And so through this therapy, it took him back in his brain to that particular situation for him to realize, like, I'm not just making this up. This really did happen, and I got to face it. Yeah. And it was one of the breakthroughs for him.
Brother, I did many sessions. I had one, and I'll share this. When I was a kid, I could feel water hitting me as a kid laying in bed when my mom was going to treatment. And I didn't know where it came from as a man, as a grown man. I knew I had water hit me. I just, it was something that I've just always known. And as I'm going through this this therapy session, I could see this silhouette come into view in my doorway as a kid in my bedroom, and it was my father. And I saw him standing there, and he kept a silver cauldron next to his bed because he was Catholic with holy water in it. And he would dip it and do the he'd pray before he'd go to bed. And he was taking the holy water and he was sprinkling it on me as a kid.
Wow.
And the trauma that created in me, because I thought, again, he wouldn't take me to church, and I was so broken. I knew he was throwing holy water on me. I could see it. But I thought I was so broken, that I was so possessed, that he had to throw that water on me as a kid.
A wrong lens.
Yeah.
To see through.
Yeah. And I ran away from a relationship with God. And this was the pivotal turning point in my relationship with Jesus today, and growing that faith. But it was when I realized that it wasn't what God had done to me. It's what people had done to me that ran me away from a relationship with God. And I think that's a lot of stories when we have guys that come into early recovery. And it was and to be honest with you, I didn't want to follow God either, or I didn't want to do that, because it meant that I couldn't selfishly do the things that my disease or my upbringing or environment that I was in wouldn't allow me to do. Never understood why I have to date just why can't I date
4 of them?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the harms that created.
Yeah.
But yeah, so get through the Owl's Nest, and then start dating Kim. She had a lot of work that she had to go through as well, and I love that I could help her through that. Since then, my wife's been through the steps twice. She's literally sponsors women, and she couldn't stand people in recovery for the longest time because of her experience and her upbringing with her father. And we decided we couldn't hang out in Florence, South Carolina anymore. Spiritually, it was either going to be we're not going to make it, or we could see everything unravel, and we realized maybe we could do some things better to help some people. And it was the first time I ever stepped out on blind faith. I'll trust God on the things I could control, but on the things that I didn't know what were going to happen, I was like, nah, I think I'll take this one. And we moved to Greenwood, South Carolina, and things I thought were going to be a certain way. And when I got there, they were, a lot of what I was leaving in Florence was showing up there. And I had to work through a lot of that fear and a lot of things, organizationally, because of somebody that I was working with there and their family stature in Greenwood. And I had to navigate that situation. And growing up as a kid, it helped me to do a lot of that through the traumas I've experienced. And, so there's a lot of growing pains in the early years, man, of things that just weren't right. And, but yeah, I went through that. And then.
Is Greenwood similar size to Florence?
No, we're a little smaller.
Is it?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, about, I think 25,000.
Okay.
Smaller?
Smaller. Yeah. But no, and so we put our head down, man. We kept doing what we needed to do. We knew we wanted to help people. Had a lot of growing pains. And then in 2019, I think before I think it's important that I share this, but I did Ancestry.com. I don't know if I shared that with you guys. You might know the story.
I do remember
and
you speaking about this.
Yeah, my wife, she got it for me for Christmas in 2018, and I took the test, and it's weird, man. I don't know if you guys have ever done Ancestry.com, but it's like it'll show you, like a second cousin versus a first cousin, and if you haven't done it, do it. I got sober, and I don't. They can have all my information. I don't care.
Yeah.
But I did it, and I had a second cousin. I ran away from the results. Right, so this is in June of 2019. And I told my wife, I said, see, this thing doesn't work. And so December 8th of 2019, we're in Target parking lot in Simpsonville, South Carolina. My wife said, give me your phone. So she messages this lady in Colorado, and 24 hours later, we get a response. I don't know anybody, with that, in the military, because all I had was, my mom didn't know the guy's name. So it was one guy in 1979 in Quantico, Virginia. And she said, I don't know anybody. And then another 24 hours later, she said, you might find this interesting. I had a cousin that I haven't spoke to in 50 years that was in the military at that time. So back and forth, finally on December 16th of 2019, I get a message, and she said, you might find this interesting, Brian. I found your biological father, and he wants to know about you.
Wow.
And I was blown away, because for me, I can remember teaching workshops. I'll never know who my dad is. And so I found my biological father. I come to find out I got 2 brothers, Tyler and Christopher. My brother Tyler's been sober off of fentanyl now for a year.
Wow.
Dang.
I got a grandma, bro, and I talked to my dad the first time, and the next morning, because he wanted to talk to his wife, and we talked on the phone for an hour. Come to find out, he's been in recovery for 15 years.
Wow.
You know, he through AA, works a program.
Dang.
He was addicted to opiates. My Uncle Tom died earlier that year in 2019 from cirrhosis of the liver.
Wow.
My grandfather died from complications of addiction. And we built this beautiful relationship, and I've ended up then the pandemic hit, and he was supposed to come see me, and I couldn't, I didn't have the opportunity to see him in early 2020. But then what I did was I grabbed my wife and my kids, and finally we flew there in June of 2020, and I met my dad for the first time, met my grandma in Post Falls, Idaho, which was about as far away from Greenwood, South Carolina as you could get.
Yeah.
And we fell in love, man. I mean, the first morning we woke up together, we hiked a mountain and did On Awakening at the top of a mountain together.
That's
so
pretty
good,
cool,
bro.
Yeah, so we built this relationship, and now his wife lives 5 minutes from me.
Wow.
In which they sold their house in Post Falls, Idaho. He was retiring from the school district there. No no influence on me in 40 years, but we walk the same, we look the same, we talk the same, our emotions are the same.
Wow.
And he sold his house, but unfortunately he ended up getting COVID when he sold his house. He came to Oaks in Greenwood. We went to Asheville together, hiked a mountain there together. We biked the Hiawatha Trail together. He told me he loved me as much as his other two sons, through baseballs together. Everything that I wanted as a kid,
Wow.
He showed me in that short period of time, because unfortunately he lost his life to COVID after I got an opportunity to meet him. And when he finally sold his house, I went there and got all of his stuff and drove it across the country with my wife. And I flew back out to Bozeman, Montana, because he tried to drive here, but he had to be hospitalized because of the complications of COVID. And I was able to get him on a plane and help him get here. And then the next day he had to go into the hospital again, but I showed up there every day, took him to his pulmonology appointments in Anderson, and built this beautiful relationship with him. And then on June 24th of 2022, the day Ukraine or Russia invaded Ukraine, I got a call that he had passed away that morning at his house. And I put on a funeral for him. New Spring Church partnered with us, and we did that for him. And but I don't share that again to, because that was just my thinking too. I used to blame God, but I thank God so much for the opportunity that I got to know him. And it's just the way my thinking is now, right? Like, because I think recovery is also this mindset, and it allowed me to develop this mindset where I was so grateful to God, because I had a 3-year window, man, to like meet my dad. And the love that he showed me in that three years was the greatest example of love that I've ever experienced in my entire life.
Amazing.
So it was
so happy for you that you got to experience that.
Oh man, it was.
Wow. I mean,
it was unbelievable.
Only God can orchestrate that.
Only.
Because it's funny. I mean, the lady that got Ancestry.com before that she got it as a gift 6 months before I took my test. So she was the one that connected us all together. So if I would have tried to find him when I was 27 and found out my dad wasn't my real dad, or after the pandemic,
Wow,
I would have never known. I had a 3-year window, man. That was all that I had. And God loved me enough, and or loves us enough, to, I really believe, give us our heart's desires when we're open to that process. And he gives us the courage to walk through it, because I didn't want to. I was so scared that if I did find him and he was like, because I mean, think about it, man. If somebody were to call, how old are you, Cliff?
45.
45. So somebody calls you today, right? And like, hey, Cliff, I think you might have a son. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
But all kinds of insecurities are coming to me. My wife and what she's going to think, all these things. I might be like, oh, sorry, you got wrong number.
Me no speak no English.
Me no speak no English. But his grace, and it was just.
How old was he?
It was unbelievable.
When y'all met?
He was 62. Yeah, he just retired.
Wow.
Yeah, he was just retiring out of the district. He was a custodial engineer, is what he told me, out of school. So he was.
But what's
janitor,
cool?
yeah.
As much as we talk about this side of the story, could you imagine how good God was to him?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Of allowing him to meet you.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the years? I mean, I'm not saying that he even knew.
Yeah.
Did he?
He had no idea.
Yeah. So,
wow.
No, he had
but
no
look
idea
how
it
good
even
God
existed.
was to him. On that.
Yeah, really.
Because there's something special about a dad and a son.
How did your mom take that?
No, I mean, she was open. She was
Was it difficult though?
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult for her, and because 5 years before, the man that raised me passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot from him too. But she was resentful. But it was something that I had to do. Like I wanted to know those parts.
Did did your stepdad know you wasn't his?
Yeah. Oh yeah. When he got back from Okinawa, and found out that my mom was pregnant, she looked at him and said, "If you don't accept him as your son, I'll take the other two and go back to Europe." And he was a devoted Catholic, and he decided to, love my mom. And I guess they came up with the thing where we're just gonna tell him he's yours. And growing up, I mean, to be honest with you, when I found out about it, I was in the middle of a run, but it answered a lot of questions for me. At that point, I was numb, and it was, it was, at the time it hurt bad. I mean, it was one of those deep.
How did you find out?
Pain. I was on a run one night, and it was midnight, and I was just going to borrow the keys to go to the store for a pack of cigarettes like I did every time, but I never come back for 3 days, an active addiction, so that he wouldn't give me the keys. And I looked at my mom. I remember saying, how could I be his son? And she had been drinking that night, and because we were all arguing, and she says, well, you might not be. And I pretended like I didn't hear her, and I left. And actually, we got into a fight, and I took the keys and I left. And when I got back the next day, I remember going in and saying, tell me the truth. And she said, he's not your father.
Wow.
And I got in my car and drove to this river. And I remember just looking at the river, and I didn't know what to feel. And, but yeah, at that moment, it answered a lot of questions. Obviously, I mean, I don't know if I knew, because I looked nothing like my brother or sister, and yeah, I mean, it was a lot.
But I love how recovery don't look like what you think it should.
Nah.
Like when I think about your story, and I think about what we wish we would have done in the beginning, did we do it to the best of our ability? Probably.
Oh yeah.
But as I think about your story in all, like from when you started until now, how it all played into what was going to have to take place in your life to be able to experience all these different things that you're experiencing today.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I'm saying? Like if your life looked like the way I thought it should have looked, you'd have been in big trouble.
Yeah. No,
you know what I'm saying?
No, 100%. My wife and I, we were talking the other night on our back porch, and we just both started crying, right? And I couldn't come out with this statement, but it hit me. Like everything I prayed for, that little boy inside of me needed at a very young age, I have today. Everything I needed when I was a little boy, I've got today.
Yeah.
I've got my kids, man. Like I'm super affectionate. I show up at everything. I won't miss it. And it's not because I'm allowing the trauma to drive me into trying to be this dad that they need. It's just who I am, right? It's just what I'm going to do, right? It's just what it is, and so yeah, everything I wanted as a little boy, I now have today, and I never, literally, this was maybe a week or so ago, man, that we were talking about this on our back porch, and it was so profound to kind of like think about that, yeah.
So good.
It's
well,
awesome.
I could just say, man, from when I met you until now, it's one of the greatest joys I've had is to be able to watch you evolve.
No, thank you.
Yeah, it's, dude, like it's no denying the fact that you're not the same kid.
Yeah.
You were when I met you. Nor am I, nor are you,
Cliff,
nor
yeah.
But it's really cool to sit here 10 years later, 14 years later,
Oh man,
to see what God was gonna do.
Yeah.
Another 20 from now. I mean, gosh, where are we gonna be?
Right.
We're gonna be gray.
Oh, we're gonna be gray.
Yeah,
We're gonna be gray.
and old,
wiser.
We're still gonna be the coolest people on the planet.
We are. Still be listening to Biggie.
Still gonna be listening to Biggie.
Still listen to Biggie.
Yeah, for sure. But B, we love you, dude, and
I love you guys, man. I thank you for your mentorship, and
and we thank you
guys
equally
are,
for always taking our phone calls.
Oh, of course.
We've always looked to you and to get some guidance concerning the logistics of what we do.
For sure.
We knew God was calling us, but we didn't know that we were signing up for some things when we signed up.
Yeah.
And So we're thankful you've taken those phone calls and you've really.
I'm glad I
helped
could
us.
take all the hits for you before you.
Right.
But that's exactly what you did. Your pain has been great wisdom to us.
Yes.
To
Saved us some knots on the
We
head.
know a lot of what not to do. That's for sure through experience.
And I know social media sometimes portrays pictures that ain't true, but I will say that man, I know you're a good dad.
Thanks, man.
And I can tell that just by the way that you spend your time with your family. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
And it inspires me, and I aspire to be better in that area of my life too, because things that we do, it can be real busy, but I appreciate your example in that, man.
No, thank you, Bradley. Yeah.
I think that the best is yet to come, man.
100%, for sure.
Other than maybe this jumper he's about to have to shoot.
Oh yeah.
But look, dude, like you have to make a commitment right now to in the next several months to come back, and there's just so much that we could hit. There's so many directions we could go with a lot of the things that you talked about. Things in my head I'd like to know that you just can't really do in one sitting. So you got to promise us in a few months we'll reschedule. You come back and
dude, I'm here.
see if we can't take some squirrel trails down some of these adventures. Because I know the listeners are probably thinking of questions. Because we squirrel headed, so they're probably thinking, man, what about? They done took off this way. You know what I'm saying?
No,
we'll have to listen.
In a nutshell, for sure.
Well, it's me too. So we'll have to listen and inquire some questions probably people have and get you back on and have another little setting.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, me too, bro.
I love you guys. Thank
you,
man.
But congratulations, dude, on your sobriety and
I appreciate it.
What God's doing at the Oaks. Real quick, before we jump into this 3-pointer, if you have a man or a woman suffering from addiction, I know you run the Oaks Recovery and you also do the Willow House for Women.
Yeah.
How can the listener get in touch with your admin office to potentially get help for their daughter or their sister or their brother, son?
Yeah. It's just a quick phone call to our admissions department. So 864-538-4569, option 1 there. Either James or Rob will answer the call. We get those forwarded out so that we don't miss anybody. And it all just starts with a phone conversation.
And you guys are in Greenwood, South Carolina.
In Greenwood, South Carolina. And what we won't do is leave anybody hanging. Not everybody's the right fit for us, but what we'll do is like we talked about at the start of this, we believe in partnerships. So if somebody's a better fit for another program, we've worked those partnerships to never leave that person on the other end of the phone without hope.
Yeah. So what are your treatment options? 30 days?
Yeah, we have a 28 to 42 day process. We want to make sure everybody commences the program. So whatever that falls on that Friday, we want to make sure that there's this sense of completion through that, or a long-term vocational element that's attached to the recovery process. So they come in and after a certain amount of time, help them to get employment for certain people that need that.
And that's 90 days, 4 months?
And that's, typically between 90 and 120 days.
Yeah.
And then we have additional aftercare after that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Oaks Recovery, Willow House, Greenwood, South Carolina.
We've only got a Facebook page, so it's just Oaks Recovery Facebook page. We've got a Willow House Facebook page, but we don't do really any marketing or anything.
Yeah, so reach out today if you're in that area or know somebody that's suffering. Call. And let's, one of the greatest lies is we still got time. Mm-hmm. The time's now, man. Make the phone call, just like us, man. We're running out of time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So anyway, B, thank you. We love you. Come back soon.
No, thank you, guys.
But let's see what you got with this 3-pointer. You got 3 chances, man.
All right, 3 chances.
Let's see you get it.
First one. Here we go. All right.
Oh, that was
close.
That might have been the closest first shot.
Oh,
dude, that might have been it.
That was straight off the rim, man.
Bro.
Here we go. Oh,
bro, a little higher, and that's it.
Whew, the pressure I feel right now, man. All right. Oh,
Here,
one more. Oh, dude, this is hard, man. What is this? One of those like I feel like this is one of those carnival rims, man. Like there's no point you're gonna. Oh,
you're gonna hit it, bro.
You're gonna have to make it, bro.
Like we're here for this.
Yay! Let's go.
The listeners didn't see that. That was nothing but net.
Yes, sir.
No, I'm just kidding.
Big Buddy in the house.
No, I don't want to stop shooting.
Yes, sir. Well.
Thank you guys. That was fun, man.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I
Until
love
next
you guys,
time.
man. Thank you for everything, man. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you for all you do, Brian.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Until next time.
Peace.
All right, bye.
Cheers.